Okay, I now declare the February 2026 Agenda Briefing Forum open at 6:30. Can you please be seated? And welcome to the commencement of the 2026 meeting cycle and this meeting. I now invite Councillor Wheatland to read the acknowledgement to country. Thank you.
The City of Melville acknowledges the Bibbulmun people as the traditional owners of the land on which the city stands today and pays its respect to the Whadjuk people and elders both past, present and emerging.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. I now draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The advice of audio-visual live streaming and recording on the screen. The purpose of the Agenda Briefing Forum on the screen. Item 2, attendance and apologies. We have the following councillors attending electronically with my permission. Can you please confirm your attendance? Councillor Ross.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're a little muffled, but we can hear you. There are no councillors providing an apology or leave of absence for this evening. Item 3, declarations by members. We now move on to declarations by members. Are there any declarations by members who have not read and given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting? Nil. Declarations by members who have received and not read the elected members' bulletin? That's nil. Item 4, announcements by the presiding member. Approved deputations. No deputations have been approved for tonight's meeting. Approved written submissions. No written submissions have been received for tonight's meeting. Item 5, disclosure of interest. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are any disclosures of interest for this evening? Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, no disclosures have been received for this evening.
Are there any further disclosures from elected members? Thank you. If there are no further disclosures, we're moving on to public question time. Public question time is now open at 6:33. A number of questions have been received with notice this evening, and if we have the question asker here in the meeting or have a representative to ask the question, can you please make your way to the microphone to ask your question when you're called? So if there's no one in the audience to ask the question and the question is not taken on notice, the question and response will be provided in the minutes which will be available to the public on Friday the 13th of February. We have two people asking questions tonight, and that is Mr G War of Bull Creek and Mr S French of Ardross. I'll call forward Mr War to ask his questions.
Good evening, one and all. I take it we're right to go, are we?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight you'll be debating the adoption of a new council policy. So my questions are in relation to that debate. Proposed policy CP 129 has been put to council without its supporting procedure. The procedure is required at section 5.412CI of the Local Government Act. Without this procedure, council has no way of knowing if or how the policy will be applied. CP 129 is noted at point 3 in its content as incomplete. As a part policy, it will create future conflict needing remedial work to retrospectively address areas not currently addressed. An example, conflict arising through piecemeal management of existing policy is evident in response to page 12 of the Electors' General Meeting minutes, with both the Governance Committee and the ARIC Committee being non-compliant. My question is, Melville Shadow Council ask the City of Melville Council place a moratorium on adopting further fragmented policy bits like CP 129 into the city's existing unsustainable piecemeal system. 2, the city has around 130 policies. The exact number and identification are unknown due to the poor system used on the city's web pages. Some are saved to their title, some are saved to their policy record number, and some are saved with meeting minutes. An enormous amount of time is wasted researching difficult to find current versions of important records. The current publishing system obstructs functional compliance. Question 2 is, Melville Shadow Council ask the City of Melville Council to have the online publishing of all existing policies, codes of conduct, procedures and other important reference records systems cleaned and records resaved to a recognised record identification system policy, including linking through a tabular reference with approval dates and next review due dates. 3, while the attached example requires updating for changes in legislation, its content remains sound. A system as proposed by the example would ensure consistency and integrity across city policies, would make currency maintenance simple, would provide clarity for the community and significantly reduce Council's periodic review workloads. Such a simple system can be developed by Melville Shadow Council and gifted to the City of Melville, thus saving Council hundreds of thousands currently unnecessarily expended. Question 3 is, Melville Shadow Council asks the City of Melville Council to initiate and engage in the development of a uniform policy system or manual, integrating all policies into a singular format similar to that in the described attached example. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waugh. Mr. Yildiz, Director of Legal Governance and Risk, will respond. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your question, Mr. Waugh. I'd just like to clarify that as the City is not aware of the Shadow Council group that you purport to represent, its legal status or the membership of that group, the City provides a response directly to yourself to ensure that the City's response is readily and publicly available. In relation to your comments in regards to the non-compliance of the City's policies or the processes that the City follows, I can assure you that there is no non-compliance in regards to the piecemeal application of the City's policies. There is thorough advice provided to Council. Council provides that strategic direction in their policy. There's significant debate and there's significant questions around the need for the policy, what the policy objectives are, and in essence what the policy is seeking to achieve. So I can assure you from the Council's perspective that yes, we are very compliant and ensure that the process is compliant all the way through. Further to that, I can confirm for you that the City is currently developing a comprehensive policy framework that addresses all the issues that you've identified, will ensure compliance with the Local Government Act and applies the principles of good governance. The policy framework will provide clear guidance on the distinction between the role of Council to provide a clear strategic policy direction with the CEO's executive function and role to manage the administrative function through operational policies and procedures. That's a well standard and well understood governance practice in regards to the development of policy. The policy framework will also provide guidance in regards to the development and systematic review of the policies, what triggers a review, how a review is undertaken, whether it is a significant review review, policy intent review, or just a minor review, or if legislation has changed and required a significant review of the policy. Further guidance in the policy framework will also be provided on the governance process and the approval process, and to ensure a consistent corporate approach to policy management, ongoing evaluation, and consistency in the language used in the application of legislation. It is expected that the draft policy framework will be presented to the Council for consideration in due course. Please acknowledge there is a significant amount of work still to be done in that space, but once the policy framework is endorsed, the framework will be available on the City's website, and the City will commence a project to assess and review all of the City's policies against the principles outlined in the framework, noting that Council will have every opportunity to debate the policies and endorse them through the Council decision-making process, and noting tonight there is no debate in regards to the matters presented to Council. It's for Council members to ask questions of the administration in regards to the information presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Waugh. You need a microphone so we can hear you.
Sorry, somebody turned it off on me. Yeah, thank you for your response. However, I have no evidence to support those words you've given us. It's very much a sales talk, and we will agree to disagree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waugh. We now have Mr. S. French of Ardross. Can you please come forward?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and everyone else. I have two questions for you tonight. Do you have a preference as to the order?
Just the order you submitted them in.
Right, that's that one. With respect to the Melville City Structure Plan, now referred to as the Borrogoon Melville City Centre Precinct Plan, statutory 10-yearly review, and specifically with respect to the early engagement you proposed with DPLH, Minister for Planning in the WAPC, given the appalling outcome determined by the State's Development Assessment Panel for DAP 2024-13 for number 3 Bragle Place, 17 and 19 Almondbury Road. For context, you will recall that this development application was for a 7-storey building in excess of the 4-storey limit set for the frame precinct along Almondbury Road. This was comprehensively rejected by the community and by the city. Yet, despite this, and despite over 30 detailed submissions from the public, including irrefutable lines of evidence, including photographic evidence, despite objections from Councillor Barber and Councillor Lim, thank you for trying, you were stars, the DAP overturned the Council's decision largely on the grounds of an exemplary design. The process was procedurally efficient, utterly callous, and seemed to disregard clear lines of evidence which it was supposed to place great weight upon. It would seem at this time both community and city views are ignored, and that a dangerous precedent has now been set for the sky's the limit along Almondbury Road. My question is as follows in 2 parts. How can built form outcomes follow a performance-based approach with height and massing guided by context, community expectation, and design quality rather than blanket zoning, be realistically achieved given the appalling outcome determined by the State's Development Panel for DAP 2024-13? And 2, if you do agree a performance-based approach with the State, would a development panel, assessment panel, actually take any notice of it?
I'll ask Mr. Varelas, Director of Planning, to respond.
Through the Chair, thank you for your questions and interest, Mr. French. The review will establish a more refined and contemporary planning framework by strengthening the focus on design quality, community expectations, economic feasibility, and the supporting infrastructure required for more intensive development. In doing so, it also directs key concerns to the State Government through early engagement with the Minister for Planning and the Chair of the West Australian Planning Commission to ensure that issues raised by the community and council are understood at the level where final decisions on density and activity centre planning are ultimately made. With regards to your second question, The review is designed to ensure that development control guidelines are realistic, evidence-based, and directly linked to the readiness of supporting infrastructure. By strengthening the underlying technical basis for built form and infrastructure expectations, the approach seeks to maximise alignment between the city's intended outcomes and the decision makers who ultimately determine major development proposals, including development assessment panels. Engaging early with the Minister for Planning and the WAPC Chair is also intended to ensure these expectations are understood at the state level, where final decisions on activity centre planning and development controls are made.
Thank you for a response. Supplementary question. What level of regard will the state have to that plan once it's put in place?
Mr Vrelis.
Through the Chair, thank you for your follow-up question, Mr French. Should the Activity Centre Plan review follow the due process outlined within the planning regulations, it will be a key guiding document in making decisions. In 2015, when the planning regulations changed, structure plans, precinct plans and the like became due regard documents. That is, that decision makers are not bound to the limits of those plans and that they are to have regard for those plans and all other matters that form part of the planning assessment that's before those decision makers. So I cannot attest to say that the limits within any plan, precinct plan, activity centre plan, will be the limit that's stated and determined by development assessment panels, because in 2015 the regulations changed for those documents to be due regard documents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr French. You had further questions?
Just one more question. The City has a motion before it for debate and decision at the next ordinary meeting concerning capacity issues at Applecross Senior High School, to which currently proposed Local Planning Scheme 6 density increases will add significant additional pressure. My motion is a detailed motion that reflects the scale of the problem at hand and hopes to assist the City in recognising the size of the overcapacity problem at the school and action the City needs to take. However, new information has just come in, with Applecross Senior High confirming its numbers have jumped yet again. That's 8 years in a row, with 330 Year 7 enrolments following departure of 276 Year 12s last year. That's a net increase of 54 students last week, with likely more still to come. Only 6 more enrolments are needed to hit the 61-year increase average year on year. That means 2,016 students right now at the school for a built capacity of 1,563. The member for Bateman has also announced plans for Stage 1 expansion, a new learning hub including 8 classrooms. So when built, that's 240 students extra capacity based on the maximum number of students per classroom of 30, which is more than the 24 that's preferred. This is a small fraction only of the total planned increase to 2,500 students built capacity. So you've got 2,500 future capacity, not built yet, less 200,016 students there right now, equals 484 students future capacity remaining when that 2,500 is built. At the current rate of increase, which does not allow for any developments already approved or in progress, including right here along Almonbury Road, the entire future capacity of the school will be consumed within 8 years. So that's 2034 people. This means school capacity to accommodate the City's proposed LPS 6 density increases is practically zero. Yet the City is proposing to put 51% of LPS 6 density increases in the Applecross intake area. This is not sustainable and conflicts with practically every written value on the front of your agenda for this meeting. There's 5 values. I can't conflict with 4 of them. My question to you is, because of the scale of this Titanic-sized problem, that is documented in your agenda for the meeting next week, with a page of motion in front of it, shouting iceberg at you as loud as it possibly can, is what have you been told about this in your briefings? Do you understand just how big a problem this is? If nothing, what will you elected members do to inform yourselves of this significant and obvious problem concerning the school and what the consequences of LPS 6 proposals really are? And lastly, do you need help to go through the numbers?
Mr Varelis, Director of Planning, please respond.
Through the chair, thank you for your questions and interest, Mr French. I'll respond to question 1 and the other questions that you've answered in order. The impacts of the Local Planning Scheme 6 review proposals on infrastructure capacity, including schools, are currently being investigated. Updated information on school capacity, reflecting the recently announced improvements and incorporating advice from the Department of Education as the lead agency for school planning, will be presented as part of upcoming elected member briefings. With regards to your second question, understanding how the Local Planning Scheme 6 review proposals affect infrastructure capacity, including schools, is a core part of the review program. Information on the scale of these impacts, along with options to respond to or avoid them, will continue to be provided to elected members to support informed decision making. Question 3. Investigating how the Local Planning Scheme 6 review proposals affect infrastructure capacity, including schools, is a key component of the review program, as I mentioned earlier. This work includes information and feedback from school planners and demographers within the Department of Education. The findings from these investigations will be provided to elected members to support informed decision making.
Thank you for your response. Supplementary question.
So I haven't finished, Mr. French, if I may, with point 4, with question 4. Your assistance in highlighting school capacity issues is appreciated. The review of Local Planning Scheme 6 will include detailed investigation of this matter, and the findings will inform future decision making. I hand back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr Varelis. Mr French.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. In relation to your response, are you aware that the Department of Education has been documented to have consistently underestimated student numbers at the school over a significant number of years? And when you refer in your agenda briefing to discussion with Department of Education planners and demographers, with the demographers, are you referring to the ID Property organisation, who are based right next door in Collingwood in Melbourne, and who today have on its website an article about how falling birth rates impact future demand for schools and services? And do you have confidence in those sources of information?
Mr Varelis.
Through the chair, thank you for your follow-up question. Given the line of questioning, Madam Mayor, I'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Mr French, do you have any further questions?
No, I think that's enough for today. Thank you very much for your time and for the answers you've provided.
Are there any further questions from the gallery? If there are no further questions, I declare the question time closed at 6:53. Now we're moving on to awards and presentations. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 8, applications for new leave of absence. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. Item 9, confirmation of minutes. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of council. 10, new business of an urgent nature. There is no new business of an urgent nature. 11, identification of matters for which meeting may be closed. The following items have been identified as having confidential attachments, and that is C26359 RFT 252622, supply of tree maintenance, and E2688 RFT 252611, supply of plumbing services, and E2689 RFT 252617, supply of electrical maintenance services, and UP 26100, recruitment and selection report, City of Melville Design Review Group. Should elected members wish to discuss the confidential attachments, the item will be held to the end of the meeting and I will call for a motion to go behind closed doors. Can I get an indication from elected members if there are any questions in relation to the attachments for these items? Does anyone have any questions on the confidential attachments on any of these items? I gather there is nobody who has questions on them, so we'll discuss them in order that they're presented. Item 12, petitions. A petition signed by 126 residents was received by the City on Monday, 5th of January, in relation to DAP 2025-534, 36 St Michael's Terrace, Mount Pleasant. We have, prior to discussion of this item, Mr Varellis, Director of Planning, will provide a short officer presentation. Thank you.
Through the Chair. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City provided a recommendation to the Development Assessment Panel last week recommending refusal of the childcare centre. The childcare centre was refused by the Development Assessment Panel in accordance with the City's recommendation. My understanding was the vote was 4-1. The nature of this petition raised concerns around that proposal, and I'm sure the petitioners are happy with the outcome through the Development Assessment Panel. With regards to petitions on Development Assessment Panel applications, under the relevant legislation, the Council is limited in terms of its ability to call up applications. Recommendations from the City now go directly to the Development Assessment Panel, and that's recently been legislated. The City's local planning policies also reflect the updated legislation, and while the petition is appreciated and would be formed part of a submission on the application and informed the City's planning assessment, there is limitations as to how much Council can be involved with those applications now. There's nothing further from me.
Thank you very much, Mr Varellis. Are there any questions? Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm just wondering if the Director can actually advise what was the reasoning for not supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Varellis.
Through the Chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Spanbrook. The main reasons for refusal related to amenity within the residential zone, and while traffic as a technical reason wasn't identified reason for refusal, the impacts of traffic to amenity were part of the concerns that were raised. And that was the primary reason for refusal, inconsistency with the scheme and its provisions around the amenity expectations for the residential zone, and also provisions within the City's local planning policy regarding childcare centres and their intensity within the residential zone.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from elected members? Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move on to item 13, adoption of recommendations en bloc. This item will be dealt with at the ordinary meeting of Council. Item 14, reports. We now move on to the items for this evening. M2663, Common Seal, January. Ms Newman, Head of Governance, is available to take questions. Are there any questions? Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether this is an appropriate question right now, but I'll just be, calm about it. That it has been put to me that with the ARIC committee, that should be a public meeting. Is that correct?
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. That's actually not relevant to this item, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you outside of this meeting. Thank you.
Are there any questions on the item? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next one. M2664, City of Melville Annual Report for 2024 to 2025, corrections. Ms Newman, Head of Governance, is available to take questions. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just two questions through you, but I can do one at a time if that's preferable. So the first question is just about the way the ratios are presented. And my question is, why are they not presented in a consistent format? So to me, it just seems odd to have like 1 to 0.78 and then the other ratio is 3 to 1. Like, I would have thought they should both be like either 1 to X or X to 1, because it makes it very hard, like even as someone who I think has decent math skills, to work out like what the comparison, like what the figure actually is. I think it's difficult for the average person to look at it and make sense of it. I'm just wondering why it's not just consistent.
Thank you, Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I will have to take that one on notice and we'll provide an update in the minutes. Thank you.
Did you ask your second question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My second question is about the annual report and perhaps an opportunity to make another change, but will be guided by the answer to the question. So it's about the page, I don't have it right in front of me, so apologies for that, but it's about the page that reports councillor attendance at meetings. And I just note that where it lists the number of committee meetings that each councillor attended, I don't think it clearly defines which committee each councillor is on. So I note that I think for maybe it's the governance committee, it says I attended 1, but I feel like for the average person reading that, they'd be thinking, well, why she only attended 1 out of 4? I think it's important to point out that I'm not actually on that committee, so I don't necessarily have an obligation to attend it. Just wondering if that could perhaps be looked at. Thank you.
Mr Yildiz.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely we can make sure that there's further clarity provided in that. There is a statutory requirement for certain information to be provided, but any further clarification is not an issue.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Are there any further questions? If not, we're moving on to the next item. M2667, response to the annual general meeting of electors, 2026 motions carried. Ms Newman, Head of Governance, is available to take questions. Are there any questions? If there are no, there is a question. Councillor Barber.
So, sorry, I just haven't got it in front of me. So what actually happens to these motions that are passed at the electors' AGM?
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So you do have officer recommendations in front of you that relate to each of the motions that were passed.
Sorry, we don't have anything in front of us.
It is in the agenda in the late items that were circulated on Friday.
Yep, sorry, carry on.
So council will consider those recommendations at the ordinary meeting next week. We'll get a copy out to you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to confirm there, Ms Newman, so next week we will just acknowledge them or note them, and then, of course, and that's just putting them on the table, is it? And then for officers to respond to them, is that what you're referring to?
Ms Newman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So each of the motions, you'll see there's 6 recommendations. Each recommendation relates to one of the motions that was proposed. There are a variety of actions within those recommendations.
Okay, thank you. I actually missed that information. So you're saying that the officers have already provided sufficient information for us to then to make a determination. Oh, that's very efficient. Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions from elected members? Oh, Councillor York.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. There were some queries about how the people that were online weren't able to vote. Is it expected that there'll be some sort of facility to enable that for next year's annual general electors meeting?
Mr Yildiz.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councillor York, we're going through a process of looking to upgrade the AV equipment in the conference room. As part of that, the scope will ensure that the use of MS Teams will be stable and won't be subject to any interference, so that way we'd be able to, if the functionality is there, to be able to record votes from those who are attending online.
Are there any further questions from elected members? Councillor Green.
Just following on from the previous question, do we have an estimate for it? how many people did attend online, the AGME?
Ms Newman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. We had approximately 62 views through the course of the live streaming of the meeting. The
views.
duration was approximately 28 minutes for each of those views on average.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? If not, we'll move on to the next item. C26 355, 2025-2026 mid-year budget review. Mr Tuffin, Director of Corporate Services, is available to take questions on this item. Are there any questions? Councillor Whitland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, just a question. I was having a conversation with another councillor about a project in their ward, and I just went through the proposed budget amendments for this year, and so say if there was a budget amendment for a project that was not delivered and it was carried over to the next year, does that mean that some of that funding could be used to fund something else within that area, infrastructure?
Mr Tuffin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Wheatland. In short, that would be possible. So what actually happens at the moment, that if the project has been deferred, the monies are not transferred from reserve, so they sit there, but it would require a formal decision of council by absolute majority to authorise that expenditure.
Thank you. Are there further questions? Right, thank you. We'll move on to the next item. C26 356, investment statements for December 2025. Are there any questions for Mr Tuffin? If there are no questions, I'm moving on to item C26 357, schedule of accounts paid for December 2025. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, I'm moving on to the next item, C26 358, statements of financial activity for December 2025. Are there any questions? Oh, Councillor Panayiotou.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question with regard to the tree maintenance. With the contract, does it include proactive canopy expansion or any relative maintenance within that contract?
I think you're ahead of us. We're on item C28 358. So if you hold your question for the next item, that would be helpful. Are there any questions on this item, statements of financial activity? If there's no questions on that item, we will move to C26 359, RFT 25 26 22, supply of tree maintenance. I remind elected members the attachments for this item are confidential, and if you wish to speak, to ask questions on the attachments, the matter will be held to the end of the meeting. So Mr Coton is available to respond to questions. So would you like to ask your question again, as long as it's not about anything confidential?
The tree maintenance contract, with regards to the contractor, will include proactive canopy maintenance or any sort of relative maintenance on trees?
Mr Coton?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it will include maintenance on the urban canopy, and I'm happy to perhaps send Councillor Panayiotou a scope of works of what's involved outside of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We're moving on to the next item, C26 360, investment statements for November 2025. Mr Tuffin is available for questions. Are there any? If there are no questions, we'll move on to the next item. C26 361, schedule of accounts paid for November 2025. Are there any questions? Moving on to the next item, E2687, adoption of new council policy CP 129, personal memorials in public open space. Mr Coton, Director of Environment and Infrastructure, is available for answering questions. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just ask Director Coton, if I may, that with what Mr Ward, the questions he asked this evening, was there anything that you'd like to expand on or anything with Mr Ward's questions? Thank you.
Mr Coton?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think Mr Ward's questions were in relation to our policies in general, and I think that Mr Yildiz provided a very clear response to that. So, yeah, I don't have any concerns in relation to that matter.
I can provide, Madam Mayor, I can provide some.
Mr Yildiz?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, maybe to assist Councillor Spranbrook, Mr Ward's preamble to the question was making a distinction between adopting the policy and council also adopting the procedures. There's a clear distinction in the Act that talks about council adopting strategic policies and providing strategic direction, and the procedures are an executive function of the CEO to implement the policies. So not to be contrary to what Mr Ward was saying, our interpretation of the Act and our interpretation of how policies to be adopted will be making sure there's a clear distinction between the two, a clear distinction between a strategic policy of council and an operational policy of the CEO under the executive functions of the CEO under the Act.
Thank you, Mr Yildiz. If it's not too much trouble, is there any chance you could email elected members that information? Oh, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely, can do.
Thank you, Councillor Spranbrook. Are there any further questions on this item? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr Coton, just looking at the staff report, they mention equity quite a lot and saying that the cost of a park bench at $3,800 is a lot of money. But having paid for funerals recently, you know, they're up around $8,000 or $10,000. So I'm thinking that $3,800 is not that much money. So I'm just wondering if equity needs to be in the report, because in respect to, you know, funerals and plaques at cemeteries, it's a lot less. So I'm thinking, what's your thoughts on that? I don't think it's an equity issue.
Mr Coton?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. That was based on some of the feedback that was received by staff, and I think in terms of is $3,800 a lot of money, that probably depends. Different people would perhaps give different answers to that, and it's perhaps in regards to a funeral. I would certainly acknowledge it's would be less than the cost of an average funeral, but people would potentially be paying for a funeral as well as paying for the cost of the memorial as well. So, but it's probably a subjective matter as to whether or not $3,800 is a considerable amount of money.
Councillor Barber?
And just to further comment about something mentioned in the report, is it so the $3,800 that was paid for by the applicant? Would that be correct?
Mr Coton?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct.
So it's got in here the community engagement, and it's highlighted that several comments suggested they don't agree with personal memorials at all because they don't believe ratepayers' money should be invested in memorials. So would that be an incorrect statement?
Mr Coton?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the statement is correct in that that's the feedback that was provided as part of the consultation, and it may have been that people were unaware that the applicants were paying themselves. It may also have been, they may have been referring to perhaps staff time involved in organising them and things like that, which may not be directly costed.
Yeah, so because I was just thinking the walls that we're envisaging preparing are $40,000. So it seems to me a ratepayer paying for their own $3,800 seat is saving the city money rather than causing us to pay $160,000.
Yes, I think there was a broader aspect to that discussion as well, which we had at ANEMIS, but perhaps we can take that up with you later. Thank you.
Good, I'd like that.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given that the issue largely seems to be about oversaturation, which I gather from the diagram of Bicton Quarantine Park is about the number of benches, not necessarily the number of plaques. Has consideration been given to having plaques, like multiple plaques on a bench, so we don't put a new bench in, but we just add a plaque to a bench that's already there, or putting plaques on trees? Thanks.
Mr Coton?
Yes, consideration has been given to that. Some of the issues with the benches that are already installed and that they've been paid for by one particular family. So it would obviously be quite stressful for the people and the staff involved in going and asking if it's all right to put another plaque on there. The report also did look at the option of not just plaques on trees, but plaques on other infrastructure as well. It could be barbecues or playgrounds or things like that. So that option was considered as well.
Councillor Barber?
And just following on from Councillor Robbins' point, it seemed to me, and I worry about budgets and money, and I wondered if the officers did consider putting plaques on things like jetties, Swan River jetties, because obviously the river's handy, as a way of to help pay for those sorts of things, and also a lovely remembrance. I was also thinking water fountains. You know, we live in a hot climate. We talk a lot about benches, but was consideration given to other infrastructure that would be very useful for our residents? For example, jetties, upkeep, restoration, and water fountains.
Mr Coton?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So it's draw council's attention, I think, on page 79. So one of the options was purchased assets could include infrastructure like trees, gardens and drink fountains or barbecues. I'm not sure that jetties was specifically considered, but that would be grouped in the same group. So that was the consideration.
Are there any further questions on this item? Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on to the next one. E2688 RFT 252611, supply of plumbing services. I remind elected members the attachments for this item are confidential. If you wish to ask questions about the attachments, the matter will be held to the end of the meeting. So are there any questions for Mr Coton? Okay, if there are no questions, I'll move on to the next item, E2689 RFT 252617, supply of electrical maintenance services. I remind elected members the attachments for the item is confidential. If you wish to ask questions on attachments, the matter will be held to the end of the meeting. Are there any questions? All right, moving on to the next item, UP 2699. Review of the Burragoon Melville City Centre Structure Plan. Mr Varelis is available to answer questions. Any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Could Mr Varelis please just explain or perhaps give an example of the two envelope approach that is referred to in the report?
Mr Varelis.
Through the Chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Robbins. The two envelope approach in the report references intensity of development subject to infrastructure upgrades and investment within the centre more broadly. Community feedback through the preliminary consultation indicated that there was an understanding and acceptance that the Burragoon Strategic Centre required density to meet the targets that are expected by the state government, but for the community to accept the intensity of development, it expected the infrastructure within the centre to be upgraded to withhold and sustain that intensity of development. So the two envelope approach provides an opportunity for the city to set density expectations at a lower range should the state government and private sector not provide that level of expected investment, and should that level of expected investment eventuate, the city and the council and community can expect a higher level of intensity. So we're really trying to set benchmarks to ensure that the infrastructure for the area is commensurate to the intensity of development, as opposed to having the intensity of development and the infrastructure coming later.
Councillor Robbins.
Just to follow up, if that's okay, Madam Mayor. So would we be seeking commitment from the state government that they would invest in that infrastructure before we move forward with a certain density?
Mr Cogen? Sorry, I beg your pardon. Mr Varellis?
Thank you for the follow-up question, Councillor Robbins. There will be conversations had, and hence the resolution has expectations to engage with the WAPC Chair and the Minister for Planning. But it's not just the state government, it's also the private sector. So Centre Group, Westfield are a major landowner and within the centre, and they have a key interest in the development outcomes and intensity of development within the centre. But the community and the city also has a key interest in ensuring investment within the infrastructure that Westfield and Centre Group own. So ensuring there's commensurate investment by the private sector and the state government, but also the local government as well, with regards to footpaths, streetscapes and the like. So all stakeholders have a key role to play in this centre to ensure its appropriate success, depending on what intensity of development occurs.
Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. But just following on from the Deputy's deputation this evening, Mr Varellis, looking at the officer recommendation, and for the ACP review, Part B, it says built form recommendations will adopt a performance-based approach to height and massing, with additional height being context appropriate. Does this mean our zoning will be just a temporary guide and the sky's the limit? What sort of controls have we got about height is Part A, and B, I can't see anything in here about community benefit for so-called performance-based approach height. So should that be included? So two-parter. One, are there going to be any controls, or is it just going to be performance-based? And two, what are the community benefits?
Mr Varellis?
Through the Chair, thank you for your questions, Councillor Barber. I answered Mr French earlier with regards to the planning regulations and the changes that occurred in 2015. The city, through the activity centre plan and precinct planning process, can set to understand and benchmark the height limits that are envisaged for the centre. However, when applications are made, should they exceed those limits, decision makers such as the development assessment panels or possibly the West Australian Planning Commission do have the liberty to provide decisions that are higher than those anticipated through the structure planning process or the precinct planning process. That's legislation that's outside of the city's control and sphere of influence, and that's the nature of the planning legislation and framework in Western Australia, and not something that we can augment at a local level. Notwithstanding, we can ensure that our plans are prepared in a robust manner. We undertake detailed community engagement and preliminary engagement, which was undertaken in this instance, to ensure that those expectations at a local level are understood and they're relayed across to the state government and those decision makers, so that the plans are as robust as possible for when decision makers do have proposals before them, that they're well informed by those local frameworks. With regards to community benefit, the resolution is quite broad in its context, and it speaks to a development being context appropriate. That does have regard for community benefit as well, and as part of the precinct planning process and the precinct planning guidelines, community benefits are a key consideration. And if the city was to consider more intense development in the envelope B category, we would be expecting community benefits that are commensurate to the intensity of development as well.
Just to follow up,
Councillor Barber.
Just to follow up. So would this document be is it due regard document, or what sort of category of would it have? Is it
Mr Varellis?
Through the Chair, it would be a due regard document. As mentioned, that's the way that the West Australian planning legislation is established. Notwithstanding, precinct plans are a higher order document than another piece of planning instrument like a local planning policy, for example. It's one of the highest orders of due regard documents that decision makers can have regard to.
Thank you, Mr Varellis. Mr Varellis. Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And look, this question is going to sound a bit strange, but I just want to pick up on things that I heard throughout the campaign when I ran last year, and also the deputy's comments and other feedback from other residents. specifically around the high schools and the schools, and I've sent in an email about this, and I know this is a planning framework, a structure plan, but how do we go about factoring in things like safety and congestion and traffic when we're required to meet state density targets? What else can we do to address these issues that are being raised over and over and over again, not just by people in the Burragoon area, but around Melville Senior High School, around Santa Maria, around all the primary schools? What can we do to address that outside of the planning framework? So potentially a question for you, Madam CEO, because we're actually putting our residents, some of our residents, in danger in some areas. And I think whilst we have to meet these targets through the state government's density targets, can we push back, or can we advocate, or is there any other avenue that we can take to address our concerns and to address these safety issues, please?
CEO, Ms Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. That's probably quite a broad question. I think Mr Varellis can answer it in relation to the actual precinct structure plan, which doesn't actually include a school within that particular boundary, but more broadly speaking, we will be looking at traffic assessment and impact of any increased density, any infrastructure such as schools in that vicinity. But happy to take that question on notice. Ms Varellis might want to add something, but looking at traffic management and safety around schools in particular, I think you're really asking about, is something we are looking at the moment. So Mr Coton, the Director of Environment and Infrastructure, will be looking at what we can do to work with state government but also private providers regarding traffic management, parking management around school precincts, because that's something that's not just something for the City of Melville to consider, but it is a national issue, and there have been papers and studies around that being a particularly difficult, challenging problem at the moment. But Mr Varellis can add something to that, I'm sure. Thank you.
Mr Varellis.
Through the chair, the council report on page 93 speaks to decision gates, and you will note that precinct plan preparations in the City of Melville haven't necessarily undertaken the approach that's been proposed through this report and for this precinct. We've had a lot of community feedback through Local Planning Scheme 6. We've had a lot of community feedback through proposals around the Burragoon Centre, particularly on Almondbury Road. And as a result of that, we've really taken stock through preliminary community engagement on this plan. We've also undertaken some technical investigations to inform where this plan preparation process will head. And I'll quote a section out of the report. It talks to decision gates. To ensure disciplined governance, manage community and state expectations, and avoid premature or unsupported planning outcomes, the review will proceed through 4 clearly defined decision gates. Each gate represents a formal checkpoint at which Council confirms direction before any further work progresses. So it's important that we note those different decision gates. We engage with Council on those decision gates. We provide you appropriate technical information to guide us in the paths and directions that we take through this plan review. And there'll also be work for councillors to do at a state level to lobby your local members and the ministers to make clear the community expectations and the city's expectations, depending on the envelope that we choose that this plan proceeds with.
Yes, Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, and thanks for that. And look, by no way was I criticising the work that the planning department, that your team does, but we tried to get a meeting with a high school. I'm not going to say which one it is, and they didn't want to discuss the traffic concerns with the council. So like when there's a situation where an education institution is not willing to take ownership of their students driving their cars to school and parking in all the streets, in all the side streets, can we not go back and look at our policies and start doing no parking, start charging them to park their cars in the street to stop any future safety concerns? Because, Education institutions, I'm going to get shot for this, are really important for our communities, but they're causing real problems if they're not going to come to the party and liaise with local governments.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. Ms Bowman, CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wheatland. I think that's probably slightly off topic from what's been considered by Council for the agenda briefing forum. So happy to speak to you about that after the agenda briefing forum, but there are traffic engineering controls that we do have available to us regarding parking controls, and we're happy to talk to you about that afterwards. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving on to the next item. Oh, sorry, further questions. Councillor York, you have a question.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I guess my question's for Mr Varelis. I'm just wondering if there's a clear link that, or is there a link or argument that can be made if we were to accept higher density and height limits in the Burragoon Garden City Activity Centre, could that, in lieu of higher density in the surrounding residential suburbs, can the argument be made to concentrate that higher density and height limits in this commercial block? And I guess what is the likelihood of WA planning to accept that argument?
Mr Varelis?
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor York. The intensity of development within the Burragoon Precinct Plan area will contribute towards the density targets for the city. Our engagement with the state government is that the density targets are a guide, and it may be 18 months or so ago now that the CEO and I and the Deputy Mayor at the time, Councillor Barber, actually engaged with the Minister for Planning. And while intensity in our activity centres is a form of contributing towards density targets, other forms of density, such as medium density that are anticipated in other parts of the city and within and adjacent to our activity centres, are also considered important contributors towards the density target. So while we may consider more intense development in areas like Burragoon contributing a higher percentage to the density target, the state government and particularly the current Minister for Planning has a view that there is a spectrum of density that needs to be contributed towards those density targets, and it's not necessarily always apartment product. It may also be other lower forms of density, such as medium density townhouses, or even aspects of lower density standard traditional suburban development contributing towards that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, does the $250,000 price tag take us all the way through to a final version of the structure plan?
Mr Varelis?
Through the chair, just allow me to refresh myself on that information. Bear with me. Through the chair, that is an estimate provided as part of the reporting. It will be subject to a tender and quotations process, which we can further engage with council on through the budget process.
Okay, are there any further questions? If there's no further questions, I'll move on to the next item. Item UP 26100, Recruitment and Selection Report, City of Melville Design Review Group. I remind elected members that the attachments for this item are confidential, and if you wish to ask questions on the attachments, the matter will be held excuse me, to the end of the meeting. Are there any questions? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quick one. Is an urban designer the same as an urban planner, or is that different? Thank you.
Mr Varelis?
Through the chair, an urban designer has skills associated with localised outcomes at the streetscape level, the human scale interaction between private development and the public realm is the expertise of an urban designer. They have skills closely associated with architecture, but not necessarily defined to a single building, but the interaction of those buildings with the public realm. Whereas urban planners have some skills associated with urban design, but are generally around the process of developing plans, which is much broader than just the interface and design between the public and private realm. It also accounts for community consultation, infrastructure requirements, and statutory planning processes as well.
Thank you. Are there further questions on this item? If there are not, I'll move on to item UP 26101, proposed scheme amendment, DA 2025-947, public open space to residential R60. And this is happening in Worley Street, Willagee. Prior to discussion of the item, Mr Ponton, Manager of Strategic Urban Planning, will provide a short officer presentation. Thank you, Mr Ponton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a brief presentation on a historic item. Back in 2017, Council granted approval for a temporary access way over a portion of Winnicott Reserve. That was to facilitate development of a apartment building on the Altura village site. Altura Living then sought to purchase that parcel of land. I'd use it on a more permanent basis. In 2021, following a community engagement phase, Council agreed to the sale of the land to Altura. That sale has now concluded. The land has been amalgamated with the remainder of the site. The scheme amendment, which is the subject of tonight's presentation, is a condition of sale with the Department of Land. So just an aerial shot, Winnicott Reserve to the top of the picture, the access way going over a portion of the former reserve. Next slide, please. The scheme amendment, as I say, is largely a formality. The application condition of sale has now been received, and that involves changing a portion of the reserve to residential R60. That's the zoning in keeping with the remainder of the Altura site. As I say, it's largely administrative. The decision to dispose of the land has been made previously and the sale transaction is complete. In scheme amendment procedures, there's different categories of amendments. Given the administrative nature of this proposal, we're considering that it be dealt with as a basic amendment, and with a basic amendment it would be forwarded to the West Australian Planning Commission with a recommendation without public advertising. In terms of the council recommendation, we note that the appearance of the access way presents poorly to the adjoining reserve. So in addition to recommending the finalisation of the administrative amendment, we'd be requesting that Altura Living undertake improvements to the appearance of the space. So just a map there again showing the reserve and the portion of scheme amendment area. And just a photograph of the access way. And as discussed, the officer recommendation is to finalise the amendment, refer it directly to the West Australian Planning Commission for adoption, and point 3, as I mentioned there, suggesting that Altura be requested to make improvements to the appearance of the fencing and the landscaping generally along that access way. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr Ponton, for your presentation and for your time talking to me on the phone about this item. Look, I'm just looking at the minutes of the meeting in 2021 when this came up, and I moved an alternate motion. And one of the points of that alternate motion is that Altura Living, the opportunity doesn't even make sense actually. Opportunity and the need to work with the city's officers and the broader community to refine the proposed boundary treatments to the Wahronga site, Willagee. Have they, in your dealings with the Altura or the planners or whoever it is that you're talking to, have they actually indicated that they're willing to engage with the community and the city about the proposed boundary treatments in this area? In this accessway, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ponton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As part of the processing of the scheme amendment application, we, as officers, have noted the poor appearance of the accessway, and we have sought, as part of this process, to seek improvements to the appearance of the land. To date, we haven't had any support from the consultants that we're dealing with to achieve that. So, therefore, via the recommendation, we're seeking to formalise that through a request.
Councillor Wheatland.
Thank you. Look, from my memory, because at the time of this decision, I think we just had that victory over the public open space being rezoned from, was it the Myree ones? What was that, those?
Yeah, there was about, my
Five or
recollection
six?
is about 10 of them.
Six little parks. So this was really quite, sorry, Madam Mayor, quite topical. And we engaged with the community, and the community were very, very clear that they wanted, you know, I think during the debate I asked about, you know, maybe a community garden out in the front area where the old service station used to be. I want to work hard to make sure that they give back to the community what they said they were going to do. Can you help me with some amendments, please, to this motion, Mr. Ponton, or the Planning Department?
Mr. Ponton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question. The scheme amendment process is relatively limited in what we can do, but we can use the procedure to formalise a request to the applicant to attend to what is currently a fairly poor outcome in terms of the interface to the park. The landowner concerned will be likely to be putting in future development applications, and those development applications might give us a better opportunity to enforce improvements. So, yeah, there would be opportunity to expand on the officer's suggestion of a request to Altura Living in this case, to ensure that the issue is well known, and as future development applications are received by the city, we could more formally explore opportunities for improvement.
One more question.
Yeah, and this is just a simple question to unpack. Hang on, let me go back over to this one. What the scheme amendment is seeking to do, just so I can explain it to my residents and ratepayers, to change the zoning of that area from public open space to R60. Is there any way that the landowner can use that access way that they want for a road to put a development on there?
Mr. Ponton.
Thank you for the question. The portion of land is owned freehold now by Altura Living. It is effectively part of their land. It's no longer part of the reserve. So the current reservation of the land as public open space does need to be attended to. It would be open in the very long term for the landowner to explore development on that site. Our understanding is that for the medium term, they intend to use the access way as an alternative driveway for further apartment construction on their site. The dwellings immediately adjoining the access way are probably the newest built form in that particular village, and indications are that there's not plans to redevelop that portion of the site, but in the longer term it's freehold land and subject to this amendment would be zoned for development, although the reality is that probably is some time off.
Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to the report and the recommendation, there's a line there which says that the proposed scheme amendment is a condition of the sale of the land between Altura and DPLH. Does that mean if the scheme amendment was not approved, then the sale of the land doesn't actually take place if it's a condition?
Mr. Ponton.
Thank you for the question. My understanding is it was a requirement of the sale, but it wasn't linked to a requirement to be met pre-settlement. Condition might not be the correct term, but it was an obligation of the owner that it be sorted out, but it wasn't a requirement to be done before settlement.
Councillor Woodall.
Yeah, just to follow up, if I may, Madam Mayor, would it be open to the council to decline to progress the scheme amendment and to request that they make improvements to the appearance of the driveway prior to us considering any request for a scheme amendment?
Mr. Ponton.
Thank you for the question. The options for council in dealing with this application are to, as recommended, adopt the scheme amendment as a basic amendment and refer it directly to the West Australian Planning Commission. Secondly, council could consider it a standard amendment and seek to advertise the amendment. Or thirdly, council could seek to not initiate the amendment. That would be an option. The landowner may seek recourse there, but they would be the three options available to council at this stage. There are issues in leaving a portion of reserved land in private ownership. There's governance issues there, but in answer to your question, it's an option for council.
Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. In the same vein as Councillor Woodall's question, I'm wondering whether we can use stronger wording in part 2 to require them to undertake improvements as opposed to request, or are we limited in what we can expect them to do? And is that the reason that the word request has been chosen? Thank you.
Mr. Ponton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the scheme amendment process limits our ability, hence the use of the word request. Should the request not be followed through by the landowner, we would still have opportunity as future development applications are submitted for other development on the site. But we would be hopeful that we can make the request and get some improvements up front.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Ponton. My question is, if council were not to support the recommendation, how will this impact Altura? Thanks.
Mr. Ponton.
Thank you for the question. There would be little immediate effect. It would be more in the the long-term use of the land, and as I highlighted, it would result in a governance issue where we have a portion of privately owned land reserved for public open space. So it would create an anomaly and some potential complications in the short term. As I say, it probably wouldn't have a huge impact on the landowner. I expect the landowner would explore other avenues to resolve the anomaly, however.
CEO, Ms Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to also refer to the report, which does say that should the council decide not to initiate the scheme amendment, the applicant is able to seek the intervention of the Minister for Planning under Section 76 of the Planning and Development Act, and the Minister can order the city to proceed with public advertising and or adoption of the amendment. So just wanted to also make that comment, which is in the consequence section of the report. Thank you.
Are there further questions? There are no further questions, so we'll move on to the balance of the meeting, which is 15. Motions with previous notice. There are no motions with previous notice for this evening. 16 motions without previous notice. There are no motions without previous notice for this evening. Item 17, matters for which the meeting was closed to the public. There have been no matters that have been closed for the public. So we're going on to okay, we're moving on to item 18, decisions made while the meeting was closed. Well, there weren't any because it wasn't closed. But for the purposes of the notes, we won't need that one either. 19, closure. For the purposes of the notes, can the following councillors please confirm they're still in attendance? And I believe that's just Councillor Ross.
I'm still awake, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 7:51. Thank you for your attendance.